Did you know that simply being listened to lights up the same part of the brain as receiving a reward, a hug, a paycheck, a rush of dopamine? But what happens when we don't feel heard? I almost lost my best friend because I couldn't shut up and listen, not actively, not deeply, not with care. In a world full of noise, where everybody's posting, preaching, and performing, the rarest, most powerful thing you can do is this. This video is about a superpower you didn't even know you had. Today, we're diving deep into the art, science, and soul of listening. Why it's so hard, what's happening in your brain when you do it right, how different cultures master it, and how you can become the kind of person everyone feels safe opening up to. Let's be honest, we live in a world that values being heard more than hearing. We praise speakers, leaders, influencers, but rarely do we celebrate the listeners. Yet the best leaders, the most trusted partners, the most impactful parents, they listen deeply. Nelson Mandela once said he learned to be the last to speak in any meeting, not because he lacked ideas, but because he respected others enough to hear them first.
Now, Nelson Mandela is a very, very important case study in the leadership world because he is universally around the world regarded as a great leader. Different people are viewed differently depending on where you go in the world, but not Nelson Mandela, which is why he's an important case, right? Because it's universal. And he was asked by a journalist, how did you learn to be an effective leader, to be a good leader? And he told the story of his childhood. He grew up as the son of a tribal chief. His dad was a tribal chief. And he said, I remember going to tribal meetings with my father. And I remember two things. They always sat in a circle, and my father was always the last to speak. Now, if you think about it, when we come into meetings, the number of times we sit at the head of the table versus sitting in the middle of the table, we create a hierarchy. That's number one, as opposed to even on a rectangular table, you can create a circle, right? And you think of the number of times we come into meetings and we go, okay, here's the challenge we're facing, guys. Even if it's somebody who's good and well-liked and all that, here's the challenge we're facing. I want to get your point of view. Here's what I think, but tell me what you think.
Yeah.
Too late. Too late. You've either biased the room or you've made people feel that their opinions don't matter. So it takes a lot of discipline for a leader to say, here's the challenge, tell me what you think, and then shut up. And if it's quiet, don't say, anyone, because people who need to think before they speak, not like me who just thinks out loud, right?
You're doing a great side.
Process. Every time you say anyone, it restarts the system. So you have to get comfortable with uncomfortable silence, and someone will break it. And you have to be good at leading the room. Now, what do I mean by that? Much is said in leadership about self-awareness. You have to be self-aware. I actually think that's very difficult. I don't know my blind spots. I don't know how people receive me, right? Self-awareness is actually very difficult. I think we have to practice situational awareness. That's more important, right? So that when you're sitting in that room and you've asked for help, you've asked for ideas, one person's doing all the talking. Are you aware of that? Can you say, Dave, love the ideas, let's hear from somebody else? Or are you in the corner of your eye, you're catching the person who goes, and you're like, hey, Stacy, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Or somebody who hasn't spoken at all. And at the very end, you go, hey, Tao, I know you have a point of view. I want to know what it is. A good leader isn't leading the idea set. They're leading the room. And by the way, the leader may change their mind zero based on their original thoughts, but you'll make people feel heard and you get all the benefit of all this new thinking. So you actually might learn something that actually might change your point of view. And then at the end, the leader can say, I came in here with this point of view, but I got to say, this was more valuable to me and I've changed my mind.
That's not just poetic, it's practical. Listening boosts trust, empathy, innovation, even revenue. And in our personal lives, the stakes are even higher. When couples don't feel heard, they fight. When kids aren't listened to, they shut down. When employees are ignored, they leave. So here's the truth. Listening isn't soft, it's strategic, it's transformational, and it's rare. Let's start with a question. Why is it so hard to just listen? You're not a bad person. You care. But your brain is kind of a know-it-all. Cognitive neuroscience shows our brains process speech faster than people talk. So we start predicting what they'll say, And while they're talking, we're planning our response. Add in emotion, stress, defensiveness, distraction, and your mind becomes a loud, judgmental echo chamber. And then there's ego. Our desire to fix, impress, correct, or win the conversation hijacks the space we're supposed to hold. Real listening requires three things: presence, patience, and permission. Presence to be here, patience to stay here, permission to let them be here without your judgment shaping the air. Here's what science tells us. When someone listens to you, truly listens, it activates the brain's reward system. The ventral striatum lights up. You feel valued, safe, connected. In one fMRI study, people who felt heard reported greater happiness and rated their own stories as more meaningful. Their brains literally glowed from being understood. But here's the twist. Listening also rewires the listener's brain. Your prefrontal cortex, your emotional regulation zones, even your motor systems, all engage. Listening is not passive, it's a full brain workout. Your attention, your empathy, your curiosity, they all get sharper the more you listen. So if you want to be more emotionally intelligent, more respected, and more connected, don't talk louder, listen deeper. Let's break it down. There are 4 key types of powerful listening: active, empathic, reflective, and deep listening. Let's go one by one. 1. Active listening, coined by Carl Rogers. You're giving verbal and nonverbal cues, nodding, eye contact, short affirmations like "I see" or "go on," and you paraphrase what they say.
Active listening means listening completely. But before anybody does that well, there are 2 secrets, 2 prerequisites to active listening. Number 1, you have to commit. You have to put aside whatever else might be distracting you and make listening a real priority. Good listening is first and foremost a choice that you make every time somebody speaks. Number 2, it takes practice. Like any skill, you have to work at it. The good news is that listening is not mysterious or complicated. So let's talk about 4 qualities of active listening that you can put into practice. First, active listening involves nonverbal communication. And there are 2 sides to this. On the one hand, you're demonstrating that you're engaged in paying attention nonverbally. You put your devices completely away, you make eye contact, your body posture is open and oriented toward the other person. Now, on the other side, you're also noticing the speaker's nonverbal cues. There's an expression, you listen with your eyes. And part of that means you're noticing what's happening with the person visually on their mood or their emotion that they're showing. Do they look nervous, frustrated, annoyed? You can pick up on that by actively observing their nonverbal communication. Second, active listening involves verbal communication. Again, there are 2 sides to this. The most obvious part is asking good questions. Probably the most common pattern that good listeners demonstrate is that they ask a good question and then they let the speaker fully answer it. Like a good mental health therapist will ask thoughtful questions and then stop talking for a while and let the client speak. Honestly, what we're paying for in many cases is just somebody to listen carefully to us. So a good question is a huge part of the listening pie. And the other part of verbal communication is those small utterances that show the other person that we're following them, like, "I hear you. Yeah, that makes sense." Sometimes it's not even full words. It might just be, oh. Those little utterances keep us engaged and show the other person that we're following. Third, active listening involves responding to what somebody just said. So the pattern goes like this. You ask a question, they respond for however long that takes, and at the end of that talking term, you give an informed response to them. So let's say you just ask a person what they've been up to lately. That's your question. And in their talking turn, they tell you that they have been doing diving lately. So you actively listen for a while they're talking. And at the end of their talking turn, it's your turn again. And this is where you show that you were actively following along and were interested in what they were saying. And you can do this by reflecting back what you just heard. You might say something like, "Wow, that sounds like an exciting sport. That's really cool that you're doing that." Or you could ask another follow-up question. I had no idea that you were into diving. How did you first get into that? Of course, you could do a little bit of both, like I just did. You could make an informed, reflective statement and then ask a follow-up question. The key is to respond to what they have just been saying. What you don't want to do is just look at them blankly and not react when they're done talking. And you've probably had somebody do this to you. You tell them about part of your day or something about your life, and they don't react. They just have this stone face. That's not active listening. If you want a gold star for active listening, then you have to respond to what they just said. Fourth, keep the focus on them and let them talk. Now, this one might seem obvious because you're listening, but when you decide to go into that listening mode, just make a decision that this is going to be all about the other person talking and not about you. Resist that temptation to jump in with your own story or to change the subject to your favorite topic. Keep your talking turns and questions concise, and then stick to whatever topic they're interested in. Now, eventually, once they've done plenty of talking, there will usually be an opportunity later in the conversation for you to share your experiences. But my rule of thumb is to dedicate at least the first half of the conversation to pure active listening.
So what I'm hearing is, it confirms you're with them. It builds trust. It works. 2, empathic. Listening. This isn't about solving. It's about feeling with. You listen for their emotions, not just their words. You say, that sounds really hard. I can imagine how that would feel overwhelming. You make them feel felt. 3, reflective listening. This is mirroring. You reflect back both content and emotion. Them, I'm exhausted trying to make everyone happy. You, sounds like you're drained and maybe a little resentful. This validates. This heals. 4, deep listening. This is sacred. You quiet your inner voice. You listen with your whole being. Thich Nhat Hanh calls it compassionate listening, the kind of listening that can relieve the suffering of another, its presence, its peace. Want some quick tools? Here's the 3-2-1 rule. After someone speaks, wait 3 seconds. Recall 2 key things they said. Name 1 emotion you sensed. You'll be stunned at how much deeper your conversations get. Western culture loves speed, debate, talking points, but other cultures offer different wisdom. The Aboriginal people of Australia practice dadiri, a spiritual deep listening that involves silence, reflection, patience. You don't interrupt, you don't fix, you witness. In Chinese, the word listen is made of characters meaning ears, eyes, undivided attention, and heart. To listen is to see, feel, and honor another. In indigenous traditions, the talking stick ensures each voice is heard. No interruptions, no rebuttals, only presence.
Over the years, I've had to learn, how to empty my mind before and during a scene. Instead of coming to the stage with a predeceived notion of what a scene should be, I simply be present. I strive to be as present as possible. When I can empty myself out like that, the scene flows. It flows through me. I don't have to work. When my scene partner does it too, it's incredible when that happens. I can't explain it. In improv, we call it group mind. When it happens, it's magic. Nothing can go wrong. When I'm able to empty myself in life, life flows. There are tragedies. There are celebrations. There are good things. There are bad things. If I attach expectations to those things, it's frustrating. If I can release those and let life flow through me, I have contentment and peace. In Christian theology, there's the concept of kenosis, which is the emptying of the self to allow the Holy Spirit to come in. In Sufism, they have fana, which is to die before one dies. In Liu Shuxin's book, The Three-Body Problem, he quotes a Buddhist abbot saying Emptiness is not nothingness. Emptiness is a type of existence. You must use this existential emptiness to fill yourself. And this is the kind of emptiness I'm talking about. It's not a denial of self. It's a release of the ego. It's a release of the expectation. And when I can do this, when I can empty myself, and it is hard, then I can say yes. The and of yes and is action.
Let me tell you 2 stories. The first, a CEO in Japan learns to listen, not to correct, but to understand. An intern shares a new system. It saves the company millions. Why? Because the boss didn't cut him off. The second, a teenage son screams, "You never listen to me." His dad, usually defensive, tries something new. He just listens. Every week for 1 hour, no judgment, no advice. By week 3, the son says, "Dad, thanks for seeing me." Their relationship changed forever. Listening is not soft, it's strong. It's a choice that says, "I respect you enough to hold space for your truth." So what now? You've made it this far, so here's your challenge. In your next conversation, be the last to speak. Listen without interrupting. Mirror what they said, validate what they feel, then pause and really see them. That's the framework. Stop your own agenda. Look with your whole presence. Listen for what's said and unsaid. Reflect to make them feel heard. We've explored the barriers. We've seen the science. We've felt the stories. We've walked across cultures. And through it all, one truth emerges. Listening is a superpower. It doesn't cost you a dime. But it might just save your marriage, heal your child, elevate your team, or restore your own peace. So I ask you, will you be the person who talks better or the one who listens deeper?
Insight is about awareness and understanding and learning. So with insight, you'll have a better idea of who you are, what you need, what you want, why you do the things you do. So let's say you're being really snappy to your partner. With insight, you might notice or realize that it's not that your partner's doing anything, it's actually that you're really stressed out at work, and what you really need is to relax a little bit so it doesn't bleed out over into your relationship. Insight will also let you know your partner better. Let's say your partner shows up late for a date. With insight, you'll know why. For example, maybe your partner's late for everything. It's nothing about you, it's nothing about the relationship, that's just who your partner is. With insight, you'll be able to anticipate the positive and negative consequences of your behavior. For example, you'll know that if you send that nasty text, it's not going to go well. Maybe you better make a phone call instead. With insight, you'll be able to learn from your mistakes in ways that allow you to behave differently in the future. So maybe you'll recognize that you're the kind of person who tends to jump in really quickly. You get wrapped up in the romance of things, and then things don't go well. So you might be able to say, well, you know what, the next time, I'm just going to take things a little more slowly and not repeat the same mistake. And with insight, you'll have a better understanding about what's really right for you in a relationship. Maybe you're the kind of person who really needs a monogamous relationship. You're not okay with your partner seeing other people. Or maybe you'll realize it's just the opposite, that you're not ready to settle down and you need a partner who's okay with that. So that's insight.
Let's stop talking over each other. Let's start listening for change.